Good evening, everyone. I'm Kyle Hosier, principal at Edgemont Junior Senior High School. I'm joined here tonight with my colleagues, Assistant Principal Sharon Flynn, and our co-chairperson of the Mathematics Department, Ms. Melissa Acchiavati. And we want to thank you for taking a little time to listen to our presentation regarding the new math sequence, which will be implemented next school year. We are excited about this new math sequence, and you have probably heard some information about this sequence for next year, and hope that you share in the excitement as well. Before we jump into too many details about what this sequence looks like, we want to take a little time just to talk about why this change was made. And you may have some questions. We did share a Google form with you earlier today via email. You can submit questions now, although my suggestion is to wait until the end of the presentation. This should be a fairly short presentation, and we'll leave ample time for you to ask any questions that you have. But the hope is to answer many of the questions throughout the presentation. So again, always important to think about the why when we make changes. We know that our students are very interested in math. We have a large number of students who are very skilled in math. And so based on feedback and conversations with students and parents, we want to provide greater access to rigorous math courses at an earlier grade level. We also want our students to be ready for standardized assessments and prepared for college. And we think that they will have greater success if given the opportunity to take more rigorous math courses at the junior senior high school. And finally, we do have between 30 and 40 new students who move into the district each year, and a smaller number of students who move out. And many other schools in Westchester have algebra placed in 8th grade. And so when students come into the district, we have issues trying to place students with their peers based on the previous math classes that they've taken. I want to highlight some of the steps that have been taken to get us to where we are tonight. For a number of years prior to COVID, we've talked about change in the math sequence, and we're excited that this is finally going to happen next year. I want to thank Ms. Acchiavati, Ms. Golub, and Ms. Ruderman, who participated in a number of hours of work over this past summer to put together this new math sequence. Once the new math sequence was created over the summer, as soon as school started, at the very first math department meeting, the sequence was presented to the entire math department to ensure that any questions they had were answered and that there was a common vision across the department for this new math sequence. We then took the new sequence to our leadership meeting. We have department chairs who meet once every 8 days, and we looked at the new math sequence, answered any questions that they may have, and then took in their feedback as part of the new sequence. We then met with 6th and 7th grade teachers and principals from Greenville and Sealy to ensure that there would be a smooth transition between 6th and 7th grade. To collect a little feedback from parents, the math sequence was presented at one of the PTSA monthly meetings, and there was a robust conversation between the school and parents. And then Ms. Golub presented to my principal's advisory committee to collect a little feedback from students. Once we had all those conversations, we took the feedback and we made adjustments to the new math sequence. We then presented the math sequence at on Tuesday, February 7th to the Board of Education, and we're very pleased to be with you tonight to present the sequence. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Acchiavati to go into a deeper dive about what this new math sequence looks like.
Good evening, everyone. Let's look at our flow chart. So the first thing I want you to notice as you go through the flow chart, if you see on the very bottom, there's kind of what I call a couple disclaimers. The first one is that even though the different pathways seem like once you're in that lane, you're in there, there is always room to move from lanes to lanes. So in other words, if a student's in accelerated math 8, they can meet the criteria to then go into honors geometry as a 9th grader and things like that. So please keep in mind that the pathways that are marked through arrows are just the main pathways, but based on our criteria, we evaluate our students every year. And every year we look to see if the course they're in, the pathway that they're on, is what's best for them. So having said that, let's talk about some of the changes you're seeing. So from the very top, what you're going to notice is we no longer have Math 7 honors. We've changed it to Math 7 enriched. That is not a change in the course in any way, shape, or form. The name simply reflects the course that it has been the last few years, in that course is mainly the exact same topics as Math 7, but each one is enriched. There are a couple topics that are covered in there that are different, but overall it is just an enriched version of our Math 7 course. So we chose to change the name to reflect the accuracy of what that course is. And then what you're going to notice is this is for our current 7th graders. So this is a pathway that will begin with our current 7th graders as they become 8th graders next year, and for all the classes that follow after that. Unfortunately, this is not going to be a pathway for any of our students that are currently 8th through 11th graders, as it's accelerated and it needs to begin in 8th grade. So you'll notice that students in Math 7 can either end up in either Math 8 or accelerated algebra. And then our students who go from Math 7 enriched would then meet criteria to either go into accelerated algebra 1 or honors algebra 1. And then following those pathways, we have an honors pathway all the way on the right. We made some changes to that. So our algebra 1 is 8th graders, geometry honors is 9th graders, algebra 2 course as 10th graders, and this is where a bulk of our trigonometry belongs. Just I know in the past there's been some years where this course is called Algebra 2 Trig. It is still the same course, but Algebra 2 is truly the title of that course, not reflection of the content, not having the trig. And then that course would be followed by an honors algebra 2, which would have some calculus topics in it, to then have our students better ready for Calc BC. That particular pathway is nice because in the current model we have now, the students need to do summer work, in other words, in order to be ready for BC Calc as seniors. And then if we look at just to the left of that, or the middle of the page, you'll see our accelerated algebra 1, then goes off to geometry, algebra 2, pre-calc, and then we've added here, and some of the changes you're seeing are not going to be courses that we see for a couple years. For instance, this calculus course on the left is a non-AP Calc. Our feeling here is that we believe it is something we will need. It's something that we will be ready to prepare for at that time. Right now, we don't see a need from it because our students are funneling out of our honors program. But what we found from looking at research and other schools in the county and across the country is that typically when there is an algebra 1 and 8 option, that by the time students are seniors, some of them really will be choosing to take calculus, not AP Calc. Then there is also the option for AB Calc from that section as well. And then, like I said, there's always going to be the option for students to move. So if a student, let's say, is in regular geometry, algebra 1 accelerated here, and they do really well, they may, by the end of that year, move to honors geometry. And again, the only reason we're not showing that with arrows is from feedback when we had a form like that, it was really just very confusing. So those criteria are always housed on our website, and you can always contact myself or Ms. Golub if you want more details about that or want to understand better how your child can get to that path. So the main things, in addition, that we really like about this particular pathway is in our current model, our Math 11 honors course is not a true pre-calc only class, which it typically is. So in this new pathway, it gives us a true algebra 2 honors class for our students to take, and then another year they'll get to take honors pre-calculus, which actually I just realized this, apologies, but this has the old, sorry there, Mr. Horser, but this one still has the, there's a little mistake on this particular flow chart I thought I caught. This one that says algebra 2 is really honors pre-calc / calc A. And then that would go off to BC. And as Mr. Hoosier said earlier, the nice part about this particular flow chart and pathway is that it gives our students the opportunity, more of our students, to get to a place where they can take calculus before they graduate, which I know in today's world with a lot of the majors and things that students are applying for college, that is going to open up opportunities that we do not currently have for as many of our students. So this will put more students on that pathway. I think that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Chakravarti.
Welcome.
So I just want to put a finer point on what do we see as the improvements, impact, benefit of this new math sequence. First, just moving algebra to 8th grade and giving students the opportunity to take algebra in 8th grade, we're excited about. We know that that is something that students and parents have wanted. We also expect to have a larger number of students to be able to take calculus before they leave the junior, senior high school. And that's been a point of conversation in recent years as well. And so ultimately, if you think about algebra in 8th grade and more students taking calculus before they leave Edgemont, we have a larger group of students who are able to take more rigorous math classes because of this new math sequence. We think students will benefit from the new math sequence when they take standardized assessments and from taking the more rigorous classes once they get to college. We also know that for our science courses can be particularly heavy in math, and so the additional exposure to the higher level math will only help students. It's important to note that this is a new sequence. We may need to adjust the sequence as we move forward, and we will do that when necessary once we collect information and feedback on how the new sequence is working for students. I should also note that next year, the algebra class for 8th grade students will be for 8th grade students. They will not be with any 9th grade students. After next year, students in 8th and 9th grade algebra will be co-seated. But just to help us with the transition, students who are currently in 7th grade who move into algebra in 8th grade next year will only take algebra with other 8th graders. They will be co-seated in subsequent years. And with that, we had said that we wanted to leave plenty of time for questions. So we invite you to use the Google form that was shared in email with you earlier today to post any questions that you have. If we have repeat questions, we may not ask them. We will probably paraphrase questions and do our best to answer all the questions that you have. With that, Ms. Flynn, would you like to take the first question?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Hosier. I am looking at the questions, and like you said, some are very similar. I think there's a lot of similar questions on parents' minds, so I will try to group them the best I can. And I'll start with what seems to be the hot topic, and that really is about changing lanes. Will a student enrolled in regular Math 7 have an opportunity to switch to Math 8 honors next year, or are they limited to the accelerated track?
So students can go from Math 7 to 7 honors, to 8 honors. It is highly recommended that they go from from Math 7 into accelerated and then see how that adjustment goes before they go to honors, just because in a sense, they're almost making 2 jumps. And we do want them to make that adjustment. But for instance, for this year, as we do our placements, we do have some students who are making the jump from Math 7 to Math 8 honors. And students who, for instance, are coming in as 7th graders next year, they will see all the criteria in place when they start the year in September. All those criteria will be updated. They will know exactly what criteria it is that will get them into those classes.
Great. Moving on, and I just wanted to make note that we are just going to try to focus on the questions that are dealing with the new math sequence that we are rolling out now, right? So a lot of questions about what happens in 9th grade, right? For example, if a student takes honors algebra in grade 8, what class would they take in grade 9? And there's a couple similar like that. Like it seems some people think that algebra is one of the only offerings in grade 9. So I think that maybe people just need to hear what happens after accelerated algebra or honors algebra.
So what's going to be a little interesting for the first few years is that we'll be phasing out the classes that are currently in existence, at least in their exact form not phasing out, but there will be a new sequence that doesn't exist. So our current 7th graders that then take accelerated algebra next year as 9th graders will then take geometry. So whereas we have traditionally been an entirely algebra for every single 9th grader, in a year and a half from now, we will have students who in 9th grade are in an algebra course, and we will have some students as 9th graders that will be in some level of a geometry class. And then from there on, it'll keep going like that. We'll have some 10th graders who are in geometry, where we'll have some 10th graders who are in an algebra 2 course, and so on. And that'll keep following them as they go.
Great, thank you. One question, how is it determined which students will take the honors algebra 1 in grade 8?
So there's 2 different ways they can get into it. For students who are currently in our 7 honors course, they need to meet the criteria to continue on into 8 honors, and those families actually, I think, received that information today or yesterday, and we kept with the criteria that we have had for a long time, which is a B-. The students going from Math 7 to go to 8 honors needed to have a 98 average to make that move. And then for students to go into accelerated algebra 1, they need an 88 average at the end of, at this point in the 7th grade year. So we average together their first 2 quarters and their midterm exam.
Thank you. And then again, hot topic, I think, is the arrows moving, across, right? Looking at the flow chart, there doesn't seem to be appeared to be a way to move to the honors track after 8th grade. And is that true?
Yeah. So like I said, a lot of that just goes to our criteria for our courses. And one of the things that we value very much in the math department is the idea that students can move at any time. Some students are ready in 6th grade, some are 7th, some are 8th, some are 9th. The maturity level comes at different points. So when in doubt, we can always look at the math department website, which you can get to through our homepage, the EHS homepage. And those criteria are always there. And as I said before, we can also at any point reach out to myself or to Mrs. Golb if you need any clarification on any of that.
Great. And the rest of the questions aren't entirely about the new sequence. A lot of higher level math questions, but the overall arch seems to be kind of what you already just said, Ms. Akiavati. Like, is there a place I can see the course contents or outline? Can I see the new honors pathway to Calc BC? Like, people are thinking definitely ahead. And is there a way they can see to get to those higher level classes?
Sure. And one of the two, when they're asking about the curriculums for the classes, like for instance, someone had asked about the pre-calc and the calc to go forward. We're still writing some of those curriculums because our students that are in this pathway are now 4 years away from that and 5 years away from that. So we're going to spend the next summer, and department time rewriting those curriculums from what they currently are. So it is a work in progress, and we'll keep adjusting things as we go.
Great.
One of the things that I do realize I didn't mention, and if I do have any current 7th grade parents in particular who are watching, the way that it works when we make our recommendations for students for the following year is we always want to recommend them for what they met the criteria for. But because this is the first time we're going to have the option for students to take accelerated algebra and honors algebra in 8th grade, if any parents, my students or Ms. Ruderman 7th grade parents want to reach out to us, because just because your child was, let's say, recommended for honors or even for accelerated, you may want to have an individual conversation with us to really figure out what's the best fit for your child. Please feel free to reach out to us at any point in time. Keep in mind that you can always make a different choice from those. We just simply wanted to give the best or the higher level of choice. Unfortunately, our system doesn't allow us to give both. So we had to give the one, and that's the one that we gave them.
Great. And as far as the questions, I think that we've covered all of the overarching themes that are asked here in these questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lynn. Ms. Akiavati, anything else you want to add in terms of the new sequence next year or anything related to scheduling that's happening now?
No, like I said, the 7th grade students either today or tomorrow, and I believe some of my students, reached it today, will be receiving their course recommendations. The The rising seventh graders and the rising eighth graders receive those recommendations tomorrow. So for anyone who's wondering about that, and really I'm the person to reach out to if you have questions about it, if you are not sure about the placement your child made. And like I said, for students who don't go in, if they go to Math 7, let's say, and they really want to be in honors, I've taught that class for so long. For those of you who know me, I've been teaching here for over 20 years. And I very, very, very wholeheartedly believe that some students just need that one more year in Math 7. And then that allows us to place them into the course that's best for them after that. And having that year where they're a little more comfortable does help them. And then, if, like I said, at this point in the year, we really look at how they've matured, how their study habits have come together, and all of those pieces to then place them in the class that's best for them for 8th grade. So that at no point is the course that they are in something that they are stuck in forever. We will reevaluate every year. And like I said, feel free to reach out to myself or your child's current teacher, but those are the conversations that we like to have, because at the end of the day, we really want them to be in the class where they're going to learn the most and they're going to be the most successful.
Thank you, Ms. Akivati. And I will share a recording to this presentation in Ms. Akivati's email and the weekly update that goes out on Saturday. So please reach out if you do have questions. And thank you for joining tonight's conversation. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night,